financial problems, elder law, tax problems, business matters, divorce, personal injury, bankruptcy, your life, your reality. Life is complicated. There is the law and there is reality. Welcome to Law and Reality, sponsored by Thav Gross. Now here's your host, Ken Gross.
Welcome to this segment of Law and Reality. I have my esteemed group of advisors with me, regulars on the show. Jenny Lingle, our tax specialist. Good morning, good afternoon, Jenny.
Good morning, Ken.
Brian Small, sometimes referred to as the skipper. Good morning, Brian. Nice to see you.
Good morning, Kenny G.
David Einstandig, nice to have you with us again.
Always a pleasure.
In your blue and gray striped shirt or whatever that is. All right, now moving into tax. What we're going to talk about in this segment, we're going to talk about the offer in compromise, all about it, how it works. We're going to lay it out because it's constantly in the media from a standpoint of advertising, TV commercials, satellite radio, regular radio. They're always talking about getting rid of your taxes for pennies on the dollar. And I really want to, Jenny, I want to work with you in the group on this issue, so that when you are done watching and listening to this segment of the show, you'll understand when it works and when it doesn't work, when it's right for you, and if it's not, what your other options are, because there's a lot of gunk out there, and I want to clear it all up. Now, here's the scene. You're watching TV or listening to radio, there's a tax commercial, and there's a guy sitting at a desk next to a logo for some national tax service, and the guy says, I owed IRS $90,000, and these guys are so great, I settled the debt for $7,400. And then he has this big, glaring smile on his face like he's had the burden of evil lifted off of his shoulders by this tax service, and now he's a happy camper. I want to examine that to say, when does that actually happen? Does it happen? And when doesn't it happen? And we're going to play a little game with my distinguished group here. And it's besides revealing the key issues about how this works, I want to see if you can play Ken Says like Simon Says. Now, I know this is going to be a great amount of discipline for you, but we will see how it works. Now, Ken Says you have to answer the questions I'm about to ask you with a yes, no, or a maybe, with no other explanation. Question number one. Is this situation that I revealed possible for an offer in compromise?
Yes.
Number two. Is this the best solution?
Maybe.
Okay. This doesn't have to be.
I know
just
they're
a
not here.
Brian show.
Well, you know, it's these questions can't be
Ken
answered
says-
yes or no, so
Ken-
I'm going to stay quiet.
Well, I gave you maybe as an option.
No, I don't like maybe either.
Okay. Number three. Will an offer in compromise always work?
No.
Okay. Number four, is this some kind of special program that the government is making available only for a limited time?
No.
Does the state of Michigan have such a program?
Yes.
Number six, are there other solutions that may be better or that will work if this doesn't?
Yes.
Now, Ken Says, I'm going to allow you guys to give longer answers, but don't get carried away, because I don't want long, drawn-out dialogue. I want concise, smart answers.
I sort of like the answers that we just gave.
You guys were
What's
doing
wrong
good.
with those?
You guys were doing great. Okay, here's number one. When it comes to resolving a tax debt, what are the ways that it can be accomplished, including an offer in compromise? What are the two ways in which you can get rid of tax debt?
Bankruptcy,
Okay, and
offer and compromise. There's one more.
what's that third
You
one?
you can die.
No, there's another.
Well,
you
not
you
if
might
there's money in your estate.
Doesn't make a difference. You don't care anymore. You're in a pine box.
you may run out the statute, never pay the liability as well if you're on an installment agreement or currently not
That's
collectible.
a good one. Statute of limitations running.
Right. I think it goes into the planning aspect.
All right,
Correct.
so we have four. I'm gonna because when I do the slides, for
nobody
the TV
plans to
version,
be in a pine box.
We have die
just
and we have
happens.
Some people do, Brian.
and we have
Some people
statute of
do.
limitations. Okay, Jenny, what is an offer in compromise? Short version.
Offer and compromise is when the IRS, or now the Michigan Department of Treasury, agrees to accept less than their due and write off the remainder of the debt.
Okay, how does it work? Walk us through the process.
Well, the first thing that I typically do is when someone calls is I go through what their assets are and what their income is and work out the formula to see whether or not it'll actually work. If it's going to work, you have to fill out a 433A offer and compromise and the 656
So
form.
wait, is this how do you make this is how do you make the offer? What do you have to submit documents to the IRS?
Correct. There's forms you have to submit. You have to submit 20% of the amount of your offer plus a filing fee, which is $186, unless you meet the low income guidelines. Then you do not have to submit either at that time.
How do you find out if you make the offer, if it's accepted, and what's the time frame? Do they just get the offer in, stamp it approved, and then approve it? What happens?
No, typically if it's let's say an individual, business offer and compromises are much more complicated, but a typical individual offer, if you filed it in January, you may hear back in June. Usually what happens if you've sent a processable offer, meaning you've sent the appropriate paperwork, they'll call with questions and give you a timeline to call back. If it's approved,
What's the time frame?
I would say on average it's taking 10 months from start to finish.
Do they investigate what you put in the forms to make sure you're being honest?
Of
or
course, they'll do DMV searches and things like that.
What's a DMB search? Dun and Bradstreet?
The DMV search, I said.
M is in Mary, Department of Motor Vehicles.
Oh, so they check car searches.
Right. They'll
What else?
they'll
real
do
estate records.
real estate records, anything that they can find. They also have records of what was in your 401k,
Now, when you
things
sign
like
these
that.
when you sign these documents, you're also signing them under penalties of perjury, correct?
Correct. It
So-
does not make sense to lie on them because let me tell you, I've had a couple of clients either forget or decide not to disclose things, and they always come up. So then all you've done is waste time and money.
And sometimes credibility.
Correct.
And the
So
flip
you gotta
side
be very
is that-
careful to be accurate in these documents.
We'll see when we go through some of the examples that I know we have planned, that figuring out and determining what your assets are and what your expenses are is where the lawyering comes in.
Correct.
And if you decide you're going to take a shot yourself and it doesn't work, you'll do another one based on what's submitted initially. That could sink or swim the entire process.
All right, let me before we go into a specific example, which we're going to do. What are the conditions if your offer is accepted? Is there a rule that says you have to stay clean? You can't be a bad guy.
Yes,
What is that rule? that
For
they
the
talk
next
about?
5 years, you have to file timely, and you can't owe. You have to make estimated tax payments timely, and if you have a liability, must be paid as of April 15th
So
of
you
that
have,
year.
you have to really be in compliance for 5 years straight after the offer is accepted. Otherwise, what? They take it away?
Otherwise, they revoke it and they reinstate the liability minus whatever you paid for the offer.
So that's a big problem. Does that sometimes happen?
Of course.
All right, so you've got to be very careful about that. That's one of the drawbacks to it. We come back after the break. We're going to take Derek and we're going to do an example of an offer in compromise. We will be right back.
It's devastating, the effects of debt and foreclosure on you and your family. There is a solution.
Worth Ave Gross, our firm will solve your problem. Some fear the word bankruptcy, but in reality, it's a strategy to save your home and to eliminate debt. If you're in financial trouble, timing is critical. You need to take action now. We've been saving homes and eliminating debt for over 33 years.
Call Fav Gross 888-235-HELP. Carrying too much debt? Resolve your debt. Call Fav Gross.
You don't need to be broke, and you don't need to hit rock bottom. If you have income and you're struggling with debt, dump it. Think about the next 10 or 20 years. If you do what the banks tell you, you'll have nothing to retire with. There is a solution.
Don't waste your future. Call Fav Gross. We're experts at eliminating credit card debt. 888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
A lifetime of hard work. If you don't have the right plan in place, you can lose your home, your savings, and more. And you didn't come this far to lose everything. Samasco Law wants you to know that laws are changing. Today, the average cost of nursing home care is $85,000 a year. With proper planning, we can help protect your life savings and get you the medicated nursing home benefits you deserve.
How much can you afford to lose? Call Samasco Law today.
If you're retired and in a financial crisis, there is a way out.
It pains me when I see a retired couple exhaust their savings by paying credit card bills and for a home hopelessly underwater.
Thav Gross specializes in helping retired people in financial crisis.
You just can't keep paying until you're broke. You need to address the problem now.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
We're Thav Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
All right, welcome back. All right, we are examining an offer in compromise. I want to take an example to illustrate how it works. Derek is our guy with the tax problem. He owes $100,000 in taxes. $40,000 of those taxes are income taxes from 2011, 12, and 13. Brian, stay with us here. $60,000 of the taxes are payroll taxes from his landscaping business that folded during the recession. Currently, Derek is working for a friend in his landscaping business. He doesn't own the new landscaping business, it's his friend's. They have a kind of an understanding that once Derek's tax problems are resolved, they're going to become partners and go into business together. In the meantime, he's working there. He sold his 1967 restored Chevrolet Camaro to his son for $1,500 3 months ago. The fair market value of this car is $9,500. These are the facts. Derek's financing. He's drawing a salary in the new job of $60,000 a year. He's married with 2 children. He lives in Farmington Hills. Fair market value of his home is $200,000. His mortgage is $200,000. He's got $2,000 in his IRA. He has no savings, and he leases 2 cars. My question, Jenny, is will an offer and compromise work for Derek?
It possibly will. We'd have to do some calculations here because Derek is married, and it appears his wife may or may not be.
She's not working.
She's not working. Is she liable for the income taxes?
Yes.
Then what we would have to do is look at what his net income is and then go through his allowable expenses. But based on this information, it looks like he's going to qualify for an offer and compromise. But the question is going to be whether he has the cash to pay it. The first thing we're going to look at is the Camaro that he sold to his son, fair market value of $9,500.
That Camaro going to be called a what?
It's going to be called a dissipated asset, meaning that you gave something away or sold something for less than fair market value when you owed the IRS, so you should have given that money to them.
So what's the consequences? $9,500 has to be part of the offer?
Possibly. If we could claim that we used $1,500 to pay 20% of the offer, therefore they may allow us to only add $7,000 to the offer and compromise there.
I think $9,500 less $1,500, if I'm not mistaken,
is
$8,000.
Yes, thank you, Ken.
I'm just teasing you. Okay. All right, so let's say it was $8,000. Is that how much he has to make his offer, or it's $8,000 plus what?
Well, I look at, and I see he's got an IRA. If he can take the funds out of that, meaning he doesn't have to retire, which it does not appear he does because he is...
He only has $2,000 in there.
Right. They would take 70%, so that would be $1,400. And the reason it's 70% is they're just assuming 30% is going to go to current taxes.
All right, so now we're at $9,400.
That's correct.
Okay, what about 1 year's income? Does he have to? He's making $5,000 a month. How much do you think he would have to contribute on? What's the rule on your income?
What they'll do is they'll look at your net income minus your allowable expenses, and if whatever is left over at the end of the day there, they will multiply by 12. Based on this, with 2 children and a spouse, it's possible that there may not be very much at all left.
I mean, I was trying to pick a number at $5,000 a month that would actually leave him with zero money. So let's assume.
I was going to just ask
go
her,
ahead, Brian.
if the answer was 0 for an offer and compromise, and he didn't dissipate the asset, would he be allowed to file an offer and compromise for 0?
Well, you can't file an offer and compromise for 0. I believe the minimum is $150.
So would he have to file an offer for $150 even though the national standards show 0?
Correct.
And he'd have to come up with 20% of that $150 down. Otherwise, they wouldn't accept the offer. Correct?
Correct. The offer wouldn't be processable, so they wouldn't even look at
That's
it.
an interesting point. So you're saying is if he had the car, the offer may be substantially less, in essence, nothing.
Well, no, because based on these, he's saying he never had the car. If he still has the car, we're dealing with $9,500. They may exempt out. The best you can exempt out is $3,450 for the car.
Right. So if he had the vehicle, he could maybe save a couple grand there. So you may want to do some strategy. You could even have the son gift the car back, and then say, "Here's
If
the
you
car."
dissipate an asset and then transfer it back before you file for the offer, is it no longer a dissipated asset?
Well, it's not a dissipated asset, but it's still part of the calculation
So,
because
yeah,
the
so-
value of the car is still going to be
So
included
say
in
you
the
bought
offer.
He might be
then-
able to
and
get
then
an
you
an
bring the
expense on it.
$9,500 car back, subtract the $3,400 for the amount
Here,
that you
he
exempt.
may need the car payment, though. They're not going to let you exempt out $3,450 value of the Camaro,
Because he has
plus
the leases.
pay 2
'Cause he
car
has the other
payments.
leases.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right,
Okay,
so let's.
all
All
right.
right, but here's the point. In this particular case, he can probably submit an offer based upon $9,400. That's $8,000 relative to the car plus $1,400 representing 70% of his IRA. He needs to come in with 20% down. He would offer that amount, or if you want to make it simpler, just assume $9,500 is what he offers. His down payment's $1,900. In that circumstance, would it work?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna
That's a sweet deal.
ask you a quick question. You just said it's $1,900. Isn't that only based on the car? Because the IRA was only $2,000. In our next scenario,
We
it's
took
different.
70% of the IRA, was $1,400, and we took the $9,500 on the car. We subtracted
And you're not allowed to
$1,400.
have any cash.
They'll exempt out up to $1,000.
All right, so we
Okay.
could take $1,000 off of that number. All right, now next question.
No,
If
because
Derek-
it has to be in cash. They're not going to exempt it out of
from
the IRA.
Okay.
Correct.
If Derek had $1 million that he owed to the government, on the same facts, how much would he have to offer
It's
for
the
his settlement?
same. The calculation for an offer in compromise doesn't make a difference how much you owe. You can owe $1,000 or $1 million, and how much your offer would be is going to be exactly the same.
So the whole that's an interesting thing that people don't realize. So if he owed $500,000, $2 million, it's not based on what you owe. It's based upon what you have.
So
Correct.
if you owe
Plus 1 year's
20,000, if
income.
you owe 20,000, it's the same number.
Yep.
Correct.
20,000 or 20 million.
So you might as well owe a lot, is what it comes down to.
So the bottom line for Derek, though, is that he qualifies apparently for an offer in compromise, but his biggest problem is going to be after that, assuming he can come up with the money, is being sure that he files his taxes on time for the next 5 years,
Pays on time.
pays on time, and does enough tax planning to be sure that he doesn't have any liabilities.
How
Correct.
long does he get to pay? You just said the down payment.
Yeah, how long? Once that offer is accepted, Jenny, how long do you
have
to
in
pay?
this is we did a lump sum offer, so you have 5 months from the date of acceptance.
If you wanted to extend it out over 2 years, then you have to pay more, correct?
In his situation, though,
He wouldn't.
it wouldn't because he has no income,
No
no
other
payment plan left to
Right.
multiply.
If Derek had $15,000 in his IRA, then you take 70% of that, correct?
Right.
We'll be back after the break.
Tax problems are major problems. Don't let the IRS levy your wages and seize your assets. There is a solution.
Worth Ave Gross, our firm will solve your problem.
If you're behind on your taxes and owe money to the IRS, call Fav Gross.
We've been solving tax problems for 32 years. We stop wage levies, resolve unfiled returns, and obtain the best possible settlements.
Call Fav Gross today, 888-235-HELP.
A lifetime of hard work. If you're approaching retirement and don't have the right plan in place, you can lose your home, your investments, and your savings. And you didn't come this far to lose everything. Putting a solid strategy in place with Samasco Law legally protects your assets as well as your wishes. Since a will doesn't cover you medically or financially, Samasco Law goes beyond ordinary asset management protection to safeguard everything you have.
How much can you afford to lose? Call Samasco Law today.
Is the debt piling up? Struggling to get by?
It's all about preserving future income. Bankruptcy is one option. When it's right, it's the least costly, most effective way to save your home, eliminate a second mortgage, and wipe out credit card debt. But you need to address the problem now.
We help people with bankruptcy. Call the experts.
Worth Ave Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP. Carrying too much debt? Resolve your debt. Call Thav Gross.
You don't need to be broke, and you don't need to hit rock bottom. If you have income and you're struggling with debt, dump it. Think about the next 10 or 20 years. If you do what the banks tell you, you'll have nothing to retire with. There is a solution.
Don't waste your future. Call Thav Gross. We're experts at eliminating credit card debt. 888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP. Tax problems are major problems. Don't let the IRS levy your wages and seize your assets. There is a solution.
Worth Ave Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
If you're behind on your taxes and owe money to the IRS, call Thav Gross.
We've been solving tax problems for 32 years. We stop wage levies, resolve unfiled returns, and obtain the best possible settlements.
Call Thav Gross today, 888-235-HELP.
All right, we're walking through an offer and compromise. Let me do announcements, and I want to come back and wrap up on that and then look at alternative B from the standpoint of bankruptcy. Seminars coming up. We have one coming up on Wednesday, June 3rd. We have one coming up on Wednesday, July 15th. Save money through debt elimination. It's at our offices in Bingham Farms from 7 to 8:30 p.m. To register, go to lawandreality.com or call 888-235-HELP. If you attend, you get a free copy of my book, Dump Your Debt. The seminar focuses on every possible way and step you can make to put yourself in a position to maximize saving money. The premise is get rid of the debt that you can get rid of so that you can take that excess money and put it in the bank and save it so that in 10, 20 years you've got something to retire with and you're not just looking at Social Security. Register again, lawandreality.com or call 888-235-HELP. Free reports, Retiree's Guide to Social Security from Pat Samasco. That's available at ssifreereport.com. Regulation X, How to Save Your Home, The Hidden Secrets, written by myself. That's available at regxhomesaver.com. I want to thank our sponsors, Thav Gross and Samasco Law. Now, back to Derek and his offer and compromise. We laid it out. In this case, this would work for Derek, Jenny. I want to know a couple questions.
Sure.
How much would you charge approximately to do an offer and compromise?
In Derek's situation, probably around $2,500.
Okay. Now, how much for Derek to come in and ask you whether or not he would and do an initial consultation?
I would do that for free. For Derek, this is something we could do in my office or over the phone. I would get to the number pretty quickly, and I would not charge for that. A lot of the companies are charging to say, okay, we'll file an offer, and then I'm finding out that they're not asking any questions.
Let me give you an example. Suppose Derek told you he had $100,000 in his IRA. Would he then be a candidate for an offer and compromise?
Well, yes, but would he want to be at that point?
Because he'd have to give $70,000 of it
Plus
up.
the 90, yeah, it'd be 80,000. So yes, if he really wanted to pay 80,000 instead of 100,000, he's a candidate. But we have to analyze whether it's something he wants to do.
That would be a bad deal.
Correct. I
So
would
in
agree
that,
there.
from a practical standpoint, he wouldn't do it. And one of the problems with these national companies are they charge you, they get your money, they apply for the offer, and then when it doesn't come out on terms that they like, they say, sorry, too bad you spent your money. That's not what you want to do. An offer and compromise is cut and dry from a standpoint of proper analysis will determine whether or not you can qualify and what it'll cost you, and then you make the decision to do it, and then you pay for it. You don't pay for it first and then find out later it doesn't work. That's a scam, and you want to avoid it. Now, shifting gears, and I know I didn't leave you enough time for this, Brian, but I wanted to. How can taxes be discharged in bankruptcy as opposed to using an offer and compromise?
Income taxes, not
Payroll taxes.
payroll taxes.
All right, what are
We're talking about
taxes?
Quickly, your payroll taxes, you're going to have your Social Security, your Medicare, in a sense, when the employer withholds from the employee's paycheck those taxes that they hold in trust and then provide over to the government.
So
Trust
when you
fund taxes.
run a business and you fail to pay the payroll taxes, you end up with a payroll tax liability. Those are not dischargeable in
That's
bankruptcy.
correct.
Okay, so income taxes are. When are they? What's the rule for discharging income taxes in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy?
A tax must have come due at least 3 years ago. You have to have filed your tax returns at least 2 years ago, and you haven't been assessed in the last 241 days.
And so if you meet that, you can then wipe out the taxes?
That if you otherwise qualify for a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, they will be discharged and abated by the IRS.
All right, now, in Derek's case, the facts were not such that it would work because $60,000 of his taxes were payroll taxes, and his income taxes were from 2011, 12, and 13.
Right, and since those taxes don't meet the 3-year rule, the 2-year rule, or the 240-day rule, it doesn't make a difference.
But had Derek just come into our office and he owed 5 years of taxes from 2009 to 2014,
No, not all of those would have been dischargeable.
but we could wait perhaps until and then catch
could.
more of them.
Depending on the scenario, what Brian and I often do, if he didn't qualify for an offer and compromise, and he didn't have that $100,000 that you came back with later in the IRA, if the facts were as they were in the beginning, we may be able to have Derek currently not collectible for a couple of years, and then set him up for a Chapter 7 to get rid of the income tax liability.
But since in this case Derek's total liability also includes non-dischargeable tax debt, it makes sense to do the offer and
Right.
compromise because it gets rid of all of the tax,
For
whether
Derek,
it's business tax or consumer tax,
So let's
so to
let's
speak.
assume we have someone who
income
doesn't
tax or
not like
or
Derek's
withholding taxes.
Sorry, not like Derek's situation. He doesn't. An offer and compromise won't work for him for one of a couple of reasons. Suppose he's got equity in his house, and a discharge of bankruptcy won't work for the same reason. What's his other alternative, Jenny, in terms of addressing the taxes? Can he get an installment payment agreement?
Yes, he could do an installment agreement based on his ability to pay. He could do the uncollectible, which means the IRS agrees you can't afford to make any payment at that time.
How do you get that uncollectible done? I'd like that.
You have to look at assets again to make sure there's not a large lump sum sitting in an IRA or something that they can touch. And then if after, like in Derek's case, after the allowable expenses were applied to his current income, there was nothing left, he would qualify for the uncollectible.
But in this case, wouldn't that be a problem for Derek since he wants to get rid of his tax debt and then be a partner in this business? Wouldn't we want to do everything we could to get rid of Derek's
Correct.
debt?
I think we were talking in
In
the
our-
fact that he couldn't qualify for an offer
in
and
Derek's
compromise.
case, Derek was perfect candidate for an offer and compromise. That program's going to work very well with him because he had no equity in the house. He didn't have the $100,000 in his IRA. Here's the point. You need to analyze the situation carefully. Make sure you have all the facts and then adopt the plan. You don't just say offer and compromise. You ask first, you listen, then you define what needs to be done. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week.